Most people decide how much cash to keep in the bank by watching one number, the balance. 10,000 feels okay, 20,000 feels safer, 30,000 feels even better. And because the number keeps going up, it feels like your financial position must be getting stronger. But that logic has a strange limit. At some point, another dollar sitting in cash barely improves your ability to survive an emergency. It still feels safer, but financially, it may be doing almost nothing for you. My name is Mike, and the way I think about cash is not as a pile of money, it's a pile of time. If your income disappeared tomorrow, how many months could your cash buy before you had to borrow money, sell an investment at a bad time, or make a major change to your life? That question completely changes what too much money in the bank means. Because two people can each have $30,000 sitting in cash, and one of them may be dangerously underprepared while the other is holding far more than they need. So instead of looking for one magic dollar amount, we're going to calculate something much more useful, your cash runway. And once you see the math, you can actually identify the point where more cash stops protecting your financial plan and starts quietly competing with it. Start with two households. Both have exactly $30,000 in cash. If you judge them by account balance alone, they look equally prepared. But the balance tells us almost nothing until we know what that money has to protect. Household A needs $4,000 a month to cover essential expenses: housing, food, utilities, insurance, transportation, and minimum debt payments. $30,000 divided by $4,000 gives them about 7.5 months of essential expenses. That's their cash runway if income suddenly goes to zero. Household B also has $30,000, but their essential expenses are $7,500 a month. Maybe the mortgage is larger, childcare is expensive, or there are more people depending on the same income. Their identical $30,000 buys only 4 months. Same bank balance, completely different financial position. And this is why I don't think the useful question is, how much money should I keep in the bank? The useful question is, how much time does my cash need to buy? Once you frame it that way, you can stop chasing an arbitrary balance and start designing a buffer around the risks that actually exist in your life. Now let's make the calculation more realistic. Suppose you spend $6,000 per month in normal life, but only $4,500 of that is essential. If you lost your income, some spending could disappear immediately. Restaurants, travel, extra shopping, and optional subscriptions probably shouldn't determine the size of your emergency reserve. So if you decide that 6 months of essential runway is appropriate for your situation, the target isn't 6 times 6,000, it's 6 times 4,500 or $27,000. That $27,000 has a very specific job, preventing a temporary income problem from becoming a long-term financial problem. That distinction matters because cash is extremely good at certain jobs. It pays next month's mortgage without caring what the stock market did yesterday. It handles a broken transmission without requiring you to borrow at a high interest rate. And if your income disappears during a market downturn, it can keep you from selling long-term investments simply because you need groceries. So the return on emergency cash is not just the interest it earns. Part of its value is optionality. It gives you time to make a good decision instead of forcing you to make a fast one. But there's another side to that equation. Once you already have enough runway, every additional dollar of cash needs a reason to exist. Go back to our household targeting $27,000 of emergency reserves. Suppose they actually have $60,000 sitting in cash. The first $27,000 is assigned to the emergency fund. Now we have $33,000 left. Maybe $15,000 is for a car they expect to buy next year. Fine, that money has a job and a relatively short deadline. Taking significant market risk with money you know you'll need soon can create a much bigger problem than earning a modest return. But now $18,000 remains. There's no planned purchase, no upcoming tax bill, no tuition payment, no renovation scheduled, no reason they expect to need it for years. That $18,000 is where the calculation changes. Let's use a hypothetical example. Suppose that money remains in cash earning 3% per year, while a diversified long-term investment portfolio earns an average of 7% over the same period. Those are assumptions, not promises. Cash rates change, markets are volatile, and an actual investment return could be much lower or higher. But the assumptions let us see the trade-off. At 3%, $18,000 becomes roughly $32,500 after 20 years. At 7%, it becomes roughly $69,700. The difference is around $37,000. Notice what created that gap. It wasn't one terrible decision, it was a reasonable decision repeated for a very long time. That's what makes excess cash difficult to notice. If you spend $18,000 on something unnecessary tomorrow, you feel the loss immediately. If you leave $18,000 unnecessarily conservative for 20 years, your banking app may never show you a loss at all. Your balance can increase every year while the opportunity cost stays invisible. But that does not mean the correct response is to invest every dollar above some universal emergency fund number. Time horizon matters. Suppose that same $18,000 is a down payment you'll need 18 months from now. Now the equation is different. You may willingly sacrifice expected return because the money cannot tolerate a major decline right before the purchase. The goal is no longer maximizing long-term growth. The goal is making sure $18,000 is available when the deadline arrives. That gives us 3 variables that matter more than the size of the account: monthly essential spending, the amount of runway you need, and the deadline attached to each additional dollar. And your runway requirement is not automatically 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. Those can be useful reference points, but they are not laws of finance. Someone with highly predictable income, 2 earners in the household, low fixed expenses, and strong access to other liquidity may reasonably need less cash protection than someone whose income changes dramatically from month to month. A freelancer supporting a family has a different risk equation from a dual-income household where either salary can cover most essential bills. The point is not that one person should hold more because they are more conservative. Their cash is protecting against a different probability and a different consequence. There's also a diminishing return to safety. Going from 2 weeks of runway to 2 months can dramatically change your ability to absorb a disruption. Going from 2 months to 6 might still materially reduce your risk. But if your circumstances only require 6 months, going from 18 months to 19 months probably doesn't transform your financial resilience. You bought another month of protection. The question is what that extra month cost you somewhere else. And that's the framework I want you to remember. Cash has a cost, but being short on cash has a cost too. Too little runway can force debt, rush decisions, or selling assets at exactly the wrong moment. Too much unassigned cash can quietly sacrifice years of potential growth. The goal is not minimum cash. The goal is sufficient cash. Once you know your essential monthly expenses, choose a runway that reflects the actual stability of your financial life. Then identify every dollar above that amount and ask whether it has a specific job and a realistic deadline. If it does, evaluate it according to that job. If it doesn't, you've found the part of your balance that deserves another decision. The arithmetic is surprisingly simple, which creates a more interesting problem. If someone understands that $30,000 can represent 4 months of safety or 7 months of safety, and understands that decades of excess cash can carry a substantial opportunity cost, why would they still keep accumulating cash long after their runway is fully funded? Because the number in your bank account isn't just doing financial work. It's doing psychological work. That psychological job explains why excess cash can be so difficult to recognize. A large bank balance doesn't just represent purchasing power. It can represent safety, control, progress, and the comforting feeling that whatever happens next, you have options. And those feelings are not irrational. The problem starts when the feeling of safety keeps increasing even after the financial benefit has begun to flatten out. Go back to the household with $27,000 of emergency reserves. If that amount represents 6 months of essential expenses, then increasing it from $27,000 to $31,000 buys another month of runway. There is a real benefit there. They now have 7 months before an income loss forces another financial decision. But what happens when they already have 12 months, or 18? The account balance keeps getting bigger, so emotionally it still feels like progress. But the marginal benefit of each additional month may be getting smaller. The first few months of cash can protect you from missed payments, expensive debt, and forced selling. Month 19 may simply make an already unlikely scenario slightly more comfortable. This is where loss aversion starts influencing the decision. Most people feel a potential loss more intensely than an equivalent potential gain. So when you compare cash with a long-term investment, your brain doesn't necessarily compare expected outcomes fairly. It compares experiences. $18,000 in cash feels stable. You open the app tomorrow, and the $18,000 is still there. Put that same money into a diversified portfolio, and there will be periods when the account is worth $15,000, $14,000, maybe less. Even if the money has a long time horizon, seeing that decline can feel like you made a mistake. Meanwhile, the opportunity cost of staying in cash never sends you a notification. There's no red number saying, you missed potential growth today. There's no monthly statement showing the wealth you might have accumulated under a different reasonable strategy. The cost exists only in comparison with a path you didn't take. That makes excess cash psychologically unusual. Its biggest cost is largely invisible, while the risk it protects you from is extremely easy to imagine. And once you've lived through a frightening financial period, that imbalance can become even stronger. Maybe you watched layoffs happen around you. Maybe markets fell sharply. Maybe prices rose faster than you expected. You don't need to have personally lost money for those events to change what safety feels like. This is where recency bias can creep in. A vivid recent event gets more weight in our decision-making than its long-term probability necessarily deserves. If the last thing you remember is instability, holding another $10,000 in cash can feel obviously prudent even when you cannot identify what specific risk that $10,000 is protecting against. Notice the distinction. I'm not saying the fear is fake. I'm saying fear needs to be translated into a number. If you're worried about losing your job, ask how long it would realistically take to replace your income. If your income is volatile, estimate how severe a bad stretch could be. If one person supports the household, account for that concentration risk. If you have a major expense coming soon, give that money its own bucket. Now, the anxiety has a job description. Without that step, people often use the bank balance itself as the goal. 30,000 feels good, so they aim for 40. 40 feels good, so 50 becomes the new target. There's no point where the process naturally tells them to stop because they never defined what enough was supposed to accomplish. That's also why lifestyle inflation can quietly increase the amount of cash you think you need. Suppose your emergency target is 6 months of essential expenses. When essentials are $3,000 per month, that target is $18,000. Years later, your income has increased, but so have the mortgage, car payments, subscriptions, insurance, and other recurring obligations. Essentials are now $5,000 per month, so the same 6-month runway requires $30,000. You may feel wealthier because your income and bank balance both increased, but your financial flexibility may not have improved at all. Your cash balance went up, your runway stayed the same. That's a much more useful way to measure progress because it exposes something a dollar balance can hide. Fixed expenses consume flexibility. Two people earning the same salary can need very different emergency reserves because one has built a life that requires far more money every month just to keep running. There's one more psychological trap here, and it works in the opposite direction. Once people hear that holding too much cash has an opportunity cost, they can become obsessed with efficiency. Every dollar needs to be earning the highest possible expected return. Cash starts to feel wasteful. A large emergency reserve starts looking like money that should be working harder. That can be just as dangerous. Remember what the math established. Cash is there to prevent a short-term problem from forcing a long-term mistake. If reducing your reserve from 6 months to 1 month means a temporary income disruption could force you to borrow at an expensive rate or sell investments during a major decline, you didn't necessarily make your money more efficient. You removed insurance. The financially optimal cash balance is therefore not the smallest balance you can tolerate. It's the amount that allows the rest of your financial plan to survive normal uncertainty. And there's an important behavioral benefit to that. If a properly sized cash reserve makes you less likely to panic when your investments fall, then that cash may help you stay invested. The return doesn't appear in the savings account itself. It appears in the bad decision you never had to make. So there are really two emotional mistakes pulling against each other. Fear can make you hold cash forever because visible stability feels better than invisible opportunity. Greed for efficiency can make you hold too little because every dollar of cash looks unproductive. Neither one gives you a useful stopping point. A runway does. Once you define what your cash needs to protect, how many months that protection should last, and which future expenses have known deadlines, you no longer have to ask whether a large balance feels safe. You can ask whether it is doing a specific job. And that leads to the practical part because the solution isn't to become less emotional about money. That's probably unrealistic. The solution is to build a system where your emotions don't get to redefine enough every time the world gets scary. So how do you turn this into an actual decision? Don't start by asking whether you have too much money in the bank. Start by giving your cash a job. Once every dollar has a job, the excess becomes much easier to see. First, calculate your essential monthly number. Not your normal spending and not the lifestyle you'd prefer to maintain forever. I mean the expenses that would still need to be paid if your income suddenly became uncertain. Housing, groceries, utilities, insurance, transportations, minimum debt payments, and other obligations you genuinely cannot pause. Suppose that number is $4,500. Now choose the amount of runway your situation actually requires. 6 months would mean $27,000. 9 months would mean $40,500. 12 months would mean $54,000. The number of months is not a competition. More conservative does not automatically mean smarter, and less cash does not automatically mean more sophisticated. The question is what could realistically interrupt your income, how long that interruption might last, and how expensive it would be if your estimate were wrong. If two people in the household earn reliable incomes and either one can cover most essential expenses, the required runway may be different from a household depending on one variable income. If your job is difficult to replace, your obligations are unusually rigid, or your income arrives unpredictably, additional runway may be worth the opportunity cost. Once that emergency number is funded, move to the second question: what cash will you need for known expenses? Maybe you expect to replace a car next year. Maybe there's a home purchase, tuition payment, tax obligation, move, or major repair coming. Money with a near-term deadline has a reason to remain stable. You don't want to discover 3 weeks before a required payment that the asset you were depending on just fell 20%. Now add those two categories together. Emergency runway plus known short-term obligations. That gives you something much more useful than a generic rule about the maximum amount anyone should keep in a bank. It gives you your required cash. Then comes the question most people skip. Look at everything above that number and ask, what is this money waiting for? Not where is it sitting, not what interest rate is it earning, what is it waiting for? If you have a clear answer, great. Attach an amount and a date to it. $10,000 for something 18 months away is fundamentally different from $10,000 you vaguely believe you might need someday. If you cannot name the job or the approximate deadline, that money deserves a separate decision. It doesn't automatically mean invest it tomorrow. It means stop allowing inertia to make the decision for you. For money you may need soon, prioritize liquidity and stability. For emergency reserves, the same principle applies. The purpose is availability, not maximum return. You can still compare appropriate cash equivalent options and interest rates, but squeezing out every possible fraction of return is secondary to making sure the money performs its actual job. For money that genuinely has a long horizon, the decision changes. If you reasonably expect not to need it for many years, then you can evaluate whether keeping all of it in cash makes sense relative to diversified long-term investments and your tolerance for volatility. Investing involves risk, and higher expected returns are never guaranteed. The point is simply that a longer timeline gives you a different set of choices. And I'd review the calculation whenever your life changes materially. If essential expenses rise, your runway shrinks even if the bank balance doesn't move. If you pay off a major debt, your required monthly spending may fall. If your household goes from 2 incomes to 1, your risk changes. If a large planned purchase disappears, money that had a short-term job may suddenly become long-term money. That's why I prefer measuring cash in months instead of dollars. If someone tells me they have $50,000 in the bank, I still don't know whether they're financially secure. If they tell me they have 8 months of essential expenses, plus enough cash for every major expense expected over the next year, now I understand what that money can actually do. And this gives you a simple filter whenever you feel the urge to keep accumulating cash just because a larger balance feels safer. Ask 3 things. What problem is this dollar protecting me from? When could I realistically need it? And how much runway do I already have? Those questions protect you from both extremes. They make it harder to invest money you may desperately need next year, and harder to leave long-term money sitting in cash for decades simply because moving it feels uncomfortable. Because the goal was never to find the perfect bank balance. The goal is to make sure a short-term financial problem never gets enough leverage to destroy a long-term financial plan. Cash buys you time. Buy enough time for the risks you actually face. Give near-term money a clear deadline, then make every dollar beyond that compete for a better job. That's the framework. If this changed the way you look at the number in your bank account, subscribe to Money Mike. I'll see you in the next one.